is obviously a top-tier brand name. I saw you have University of Arizona. That's obviously a top name, certainly in Arizona, but I think in the Southwest. Like, do these guys say, hey, look, like, it's way easier for you to market this, this program because our brand is incredibly strong, and so you don't deserve as much revenue share because, we basically have the brand value and want to keep it. Does that conversation happen, or is it still just too confounding for schools to think about sort of their brand value and how it relates to SEO and, just general finding students online?
Yeah, so I think when you look at, if you bucket the top 100 brands that like a 2U goes after and a lot of the other OPMs go after, you're on a pretty level playing field. When you get into more of the elite schools, the issue that you run into is there's only a finite number of people that can actually get into those programs. So your cost per acquisition for these more elite schools with higher admission standards is actually going to cost more because in a sense, you're going after a smaller pool and you're going to have a lot more marketing waste because how do you know when you bid on an online MBA word that someone needs a 3.75 GPA to automatically get into the program, or they need a 675 or 700 GMAT to get into the program. So it's still, on all these, it still comes down to your cost per marketing. Like you still have to put some pretty heavy dollars in there. And the nice thing is a lot of schools have tried to do this on their own and have not been successful. If they weren't an early mover, I mean, there's some schools like, Indiana that's been pretty successful with their MBA program because they were an early mover in their program. ASU had a partnership with Pearson to get it off the ground and then basically built an internal OPM similar to like Penn State. So it's still pretty heavy expense on staffing as well as just overall marketing expense.
Okay. All right. Got it. So coming back to just the net of it, it sounds like you're able to keep cost of acquisition per student kind of roughly flat, all things equal. So there's enough students kind of there's enough student demand to meet the growing supply of online programs in general. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair to say. I think at some point programs plateau. So at some point, 3-4 years into a relationship, you might hit a certain number and say, okay, this is kind of the number that we're happy with. Maybe there's continues to be a little bit of growth on those, just because if you look at the growth of how many students are taking online master's programs, there's growth there, but there's new entrances. So it's just realistic growth numbers of programs.
Okay.
So it's, adding additional programs in your portfolio is how you kind of grow the overall revenue of an OPM in the space.
Okay. Great. Got it. Okay. All right. And, right. So at some point you actually did mention in some ways it's getting more competitive. So I'm trying to find it. Like sometimes, there's a lot more competitors in the space and maybe the pools of students are not increasing as fast as the number of programs coming in. Are there particular verticals or areas where it is getting a little bit crowded on number of programs and students aren't keeping pace, or just curious if there are little corners where it's just not keeping up.
Yeah, it's hard to say offhand. Online MBA programs are probably one of the most competitive. I think there's, according to iPEDS data, there's 1,000 programs on campus and online that are reporting graduates in 2016. And there was 550 programs that report having a fully online student that graduated in 2016. So super saturated market. But, a lot of folks are successful with their MBA programs. I think it's going to basically be these big brand schools that are basically prestige ranking, or football sports schools that have well-recognizable name are going to be the ones that start taking market share from these smaller regional schools, and that's kind of what we're seeing in the space.
But they're not taking enough share from the smaller regional schools that we're not seeing those schools drop out, right? Like people are just still getting online regardless.